Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 5. Vidura's talks with Maitreya. Text number 20. Okay. Right. Mandavyasa Bhagavan. Mandavyasa Bhagavan. Prajasamya Manojamaha. Prajasamya Manojamaha. Bratu Kshetre Bhujishayam. Bratu Kshetre Bhujishayam. Jata Satyavati Shutat. Jata Satyavati Shutat. Mandavya Shapat Bhagavan. Prajasamya Manojamaha. Bratu Kshetre Bhujishayam. Jata Satyavati Shutat. Mandavya. The great Rishi Madhavya Muni. Shapat. By his curse. Bhagavan. The greatly powerful. Raja. One who is born. Samyamanaha. Controller of death. Jamaha. Known as Jamaraj. Bratuhu. Of the brother. Kshetre. In the wife. Bhushaya. Bhujishayam. Kept. Jataha. Born. Satyavati. Satyavati. The mother of both Vichitra Vidya and Vyasadeva. Sutat. By the son. Vyasadeva. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I know that you are now Vidura due to the cursing of Mandavya Muni, and that formerly you were King Jamaraj, the great controller of living entities after their death. You were begotten by the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, in the kept wife of his brother. Purport. Mandavya Muni was a great sage. Reference Bhagavatam 1.13.1. And Vidura was formerly the controller Jamaraj, who takes charge of the living entities after their death. Birth, maintenance, and death are three conditional states of the living entities who are within this material world. As the appointed controller after death, Jamaraj once tried Mandavya Muni for his childhood profligacy. Profligacy? Big word. Profligacy, I think. Infringement, that's what it means. And ordered him to be pierced with a lance. Mandavya, being angry at Jamaraj for awarding him undue punishment, cursed him to become a Shudra, or a member of the less intelligent laborer class. Thus Jamaraj took birth in the womb of the kept wife of Vichitra Vidya, from the seeming of Vichitra Vidya's brother, Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is the son of Satyavati by the great king Santanu, the father of Bhishmadev. This mysterious history of Vidura was known to Maitreya Muni because he happened to be a contemporary friend of Vyasadeva's, in spite of Vidura's birth from the womb of a kept wife, because he had otherwise a high parentage and great connection. He inherited the highest talent of becoming a great devotee of the Lord. To take birth in such a great family is understood to be an advantage for attaining devotional life. Vidura was given this chance due to his previous greatness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanjana Salakaya Chakshurumilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pasyadhyadishtarine Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyocha Patidanam Bhavanevyo Vaishnavyo Namo Om Tat Sat. I know that you are now Vidura due to the cursing of Mandavya Muni, and that formerly you were King Jamaraj, the great controller of living entities after their death. You were begotten by the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, in the kept wife, of his brother. Okay, so Maitreya is welcoming Vidura with kind words, basically telling him you're such a great soul. But at the same time, he's honest. He's not just, flattery. It's not a flattery exercise. He's being factual. This is history. And what happened is that when Mandavya Muni was a little boy, he was playing with some of his friends, and then they grabbed some insect. And as boys sometimes do, they do silly things, right? I was reading this purport, preparing for the class. I remember the silly, stupid things I used to do as a kid, playing with, helpless ants and other creatures, horrible things. But we just did it out of ignorance and silliness, or maybe influenced by some of our friends. That's the nature of being a child. Sometimes that carries on for decades, but anyway. So Mandavya Muni was just a normal kid, and he was playing with his friends. So he pierced this insect. So, as the Bible says, eye for an eye. So whatever you do, that's what you get. The law of karma, it's cruel sometimes. So whatever happens to us is because of something. That's the basic rule. So therefore, eventually, there are many details, but I won't get so much into those. At some point, there was some misunderstanding, and Mandavya Muni was ordered to be, impaled. Right? This is a torture practice in different times in history, different tribes and cultures. And impale means they will put a pointy stick, lance, and they will pierce that through the body of someone. Lesson learned. So that was the judgment of Jamaraj in regards of this impudent act of Mandavya Muni. So the sage, having the knowledge and the intricacies of karma, he argued just like a good lawyer. He will say, this is not right. I was a kid, even in common law, right? If somebody is a child and commits a crime, they are whether forgiven or the sentence is lessened. Because you don't know. You're ignorant. I didn't know your honor, right? And then you are exempted from being punished. So Mandavya Muni argued his case, and not only that, but he cursed Jamaraj. He says, you did this knowing that I was a child, knowing that I didn't have the tools to think otherwise, to act otherwise. I just did it out of foolishness, as sometimes we do. For example, Shastras explain that we commit sins every day, right? Unknowingly. It's called panchapapa, right? Every time we walk, we are killing entities. We don't know. Sometimes we realize, and sometimes we don't even realize how many insects, how many ants we step over while we walk around here or anywhere else. When you breathe, when you eat, when you clean, or when you sow, when you're planting something, right? You're going hard on the ground, and sometimes you can see worms are chopped in. Yeah, how many times we see this? Devotees say, "Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna." But these things are done because the nature of things, and of course we have to be careful. But these panchapapas are something that are there, but not because of those unconscious acts. You will be punished severely, as if you get an axe and go and chop someone, right? It's different. That's the point. So Mandavya Muni got very angry. Sometimes we have to be careful with these munis because they, can curse us. And he told him, you are acting like someone who doesn't know the higher principles of life. In the Bhagavad Gita, of course, this is a word. Who was explaining this? Shanti Prabhu was giving the class on Nityananda Prabhu, and he explained how Hitler, Prabhupada refers to Hitler as one of the small demons. Not Hiranyakashipu was a big demon, but these small demons. And he took the Vedic, some Vedic knowledge, some Vedic items, and then he got the swastika, the famous swastika. But he turned it upside down. So instead of being an auspicious sign, it is an inauspicious sign. And we see how that ended and how much pain that caused. So sometimes these people do horrible things knowingly. I want to destroy this group of people in ways that are horrible by that. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it is explained the word Aryan is also another word that Hitler used. Aryan, the Aryan race, you call it. White supremacy, and all those translations nowadays. So, but Aryan is a word that Krishna used when he addresses Arjuna. When Arjuna was lamenting in chapter 1, and Arjuna was crying, and he was shivering, he was trembling, and he threw his Gandiva bow, and he says, Govinda, I shall not fight. I don't want to do this. If you're familiar with Bhagavad Gita, that's the scene number 1, right? Arjuna and Krishna talking, rather Arjuna talking, and Krishna just listening. So Krishna tells Arjuna, how come? Kutasta kashmalamidam, where these impurities have come from? You are an advanced person. You are trained in the Vedic knowledge. Anaryam justamasargyam. This doesn't bring anything good. This is a symptom of those who are not trained in the higher principles of life. Anaryam justamasargyam. Swarga means heaven, and aswargya means the opposite. What's the opposite of heaven? Hell. This is hellish. You cannot just act like an animal and think or feel like an animal. Anaryam justamasaryam. Akirtim karamarjuna. This won't bring you any good. Right? This won't bring you any fame. Rather, it will bring you infamy. Right? And Krishna uses that psychology to deal with Arjuna, because Arjuna is a warrior. And warriors generally are very proud and very passionate, and they fight for the right cause. So he used that. He says, how is it that you're doing the wrong thing? Right? This is not good. Anaryam justam asyaryam. You know better. Right? So sometimes we hear that, right? When our parents or someone gets on our case. You knew better, but still you did it. So in this way, Mandavya Muni got very, very upset. And he said, you are the opposite of what you're supposed to be, a ruler who is supposed to be informed and very cautious in his judgment. And therefore, I curse you to become a Shudra, a laborer that doesn't have much proper use of his free will or independence, doesn't have knowledge, and just acts fully. And it's generally despised as someone that it's, kind of less significant than others, right? Don't think, don't talk, don't give your opinion. Just do what I say. Shudra. Yeah. In this age, anyway, Kalo Shudra Sambhavan. We all have that privilege, so we don't have to. So that's the Shastra. In this age, everyone is considered in that position. No offense, but that's the Shastra. So that's the background story. So this same Jamaraj, who committed a mistake and that he was being punished by being born as the son, here it says kept wife, but this was basically a maid servant. And sometimes that also happened in the previous aristocracy. That's one of the practice that sometimes kept wives means, I don't know, concubine maybe it's a little different, but sometimes they will be impregnated by the king or some royalty and like that. So then, but that the son coming from that connection, it's less important than the sons of the queen and like that. So that was Vidura. There are, as I said, intricacies, nuances about the story, but I just want to get to the point of the verse and what Prabhupada refers here. So Vidura is therefore looked down upon in the house of the Kurus, right? He wasn't respected as much. He was wise, he was advanced. But the Kurus, and we hear it in chapter 13 in the first canto how Duryodhana insults him, right? Get him out from here. He's talking to his uncle, but he says, get him out from here, right? You're a beggar. What are you doing here? And sometimes passion, Kshatriyas deal with these swords. There is a verse that says that the most lethal sword is not the one made out of metal, steel, or some, resistant material, but this little one that we have here, right? The tongue, right? If somebody says something to us, it hurts. And sometimes that hurt stays for a long, long time. We carry emotional scars because someone told me something or did something to me, right? I can ask you a few questions, and I'm sure that you're going to remember your best and worst teacher. And most probably because he or she encouraged you, or the opposite, discouraged you. Good for nothing. Shut up. Right? I mean, we don't want to go there, but that's the idea. So sometimes these words are so cutting. Right? So Vidura was insulted in the house of the Kurus. He wasn't affected. He thought, oh, good, I'm taking off now. So he went for parikram. Right? He took advantage of that. So after so many things happening in his pilgrimage, he comes here to meet a spiritual master, Maitreya, who Prabhupada explains is Vidura is more advanced than Maitreya, actually, right? He mentions that. He is more attached to Krishna. Krishna was thinking when he left this planet of Vidura, right? And sometimes, I mean, so many details about this story that Vidura was so advanced. So one may ask, if Vidura was so advanced, why would he go to Maitreya and ask these things? But why he went, to put it simply, because Krishna wanted him to hear some things. Right? There is a saying, Prabhupada used to give the example. And in Indian culture, in the Vedic culture, when the wife marries the husband, generally the wife goes to the house of the husband, right? And in those days, like a communal setting. Still, if you go to Bangladesh or some villages in India, even in the cities, sometimes you see that arrangement: the husband, wife, and the mother-in-law, father-in-law, their sister-in-law, and others. Sometimes it's like that. Quite common. So Prabhupada explains that in order to teach, because the mother knows what the son likes, the food and certain things. So instead of the mother-in-law teaching, that's generally the cook, the head cook, right? Teaching the daughter-in-law, she will teach her daughter, because the daughter can take it. Oh, you're not doing properly your chapatis or your puris or whatever it is. So then the daughter-in-law will listen how the mother is instructing the daughter, and then she will learn. Actually, the mother-in-law wants to instruct the daughter-in-law, but she is careful, so you should be careful. So in the same way, sometimes Krishna wants to tell us something, but we may not be ready to take it. Therefore, he takes the person who is closest to him, a devotee, a pure devotee. Right? And it is also explained in the Shastra that sometimes Krishna uses a devotee to suffer, to give us a lesson. It's not he wants to punish the devotee, he wants to teach us how we should deal with suffering. Like that. Prabhupada had 2 heart attacks, right? And then he had a stroke. He was immobilized, paralyzed, and so many things. Harisori Prabhu's, in his books, he writes all these little things that no many knew. Toothaches, Prabhupada falling down, sometimes fainting. I mean, I heard many stories from him and also in his books and other biographies. So many things that Prabhupada went through. Sometimes Prabhupada will reveal that he had, at some point, a constant buzzing in his head because of his blood pressure. And he wouldn't rest. And sometimes he would say, I had a constant buzz, it's like ringing. So it was very hard for him. So sometimes we see that devotees go through things so we can learn, So the context of this verse is that Vidura was a great personality. Who here knows where were you in your previous life? I mean, I have asked this question several times, and sometimes the devotee says, "Oh, I used to live in Japan. I used to be a monk somewhere. Yeah, you wish." But some people are convinced that they know. I don't know if somebody can know, but sometimes astrologers also tell you, oh, you were. I mean, Prabhupada did say, right, that the Beatles, or at least a couple of them, were Indians in the previous life, and they did many pious activities, and therefore they got so much opulence. One of them was attracted to Krishna consciousness. The other ones were kind of okay, John Lennon, when he composed, what's that song called? I think it's called Cold Turkey. And Cold Turkey, it's better if you don't know this, but anyway, cold turkey means when someone is addicted to drugs and you get the withdrawals, you get the shakes, alcohol or other drugs, and the cravings, and then you just can't help yourself. And there's medications here. I mean, I don't want to, because I work in that field, but methadone and so many things. It's just like a replacement. It's less destructive, detrimental. So he composed this song called Cold Turkey. And, John Lennon was so excited. Oh. And then he brought Prabhupada to listen to the song, to listen to the track. It was one of the first draft, I guess. And this is a horrible experience, right? This is something that it's hellish. But he was there excitedly trying to show it to Prabhupada, make it here. And Prabhupada didn't know these things, he just was there. And he tried so many times to make the thing work, and the recording never played. Somehow, never played. He was just trying to explain, but Prabhupada was there. And then somebody, one devotee, explained to Prabhupada what was the title all about. And Prabhupada just said, hey, like, you're suffering like an animal, and you're making a big song out of it, and people are going to clap and listen to it and relate. So we didn't know, where do we come from? Where were we? What were your actions in your previous life? You're here. You don't know where you came from, and you don't know where you're going. We don't know where we're going. Who can say? I wish this wishful thinking. So here, Vidura, it's told by Maitreya, you are a great soul. You're a great soul. And therefore, great things, for great souls, great things happen. That's the idea. So Prabhupada, in the context of his teachings, he shows us that, according to the Shastras, to have this body, it's a blessing. Whatever happened in the past, we don't know. And in many cases, we don't want to know, right? Even before joining, so many of us, wish we can just blanked out whatever silly things we did. Somehow Krishna keeps us here, and we try to just do whatever we can, despite of all those things. And these actions that we do in our life or in previous lives, they create an impression. And these impressions are called samskaras, like tattoos, in our consciousness, right? They call branding also, when they put the cows and then they put the marks and they burn it on the skin. So these actions that we do and the reactions and the desires that are awakened by such actions are called samskaras. And those samskaras are what determine what type of body, what nationality, what gender, what sort of desires. Janma Ishwarya Sutta Srivir. Shastras explain that you take a type of birth in a particular place, in a particular family, with particular features, because of those samskaras. And then you take some education, higher or lower or none at all, because of the samskaras. You have some features, beautiful or not, because of your samskaras. You are surrounded with opulence or not, according to your samskaras. So samskaras are quite important. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita, one of the main questions that Arjuna presents to Krishna in chapter 6, he says, because Krishna is like machine gunning him about becoming a transcendentalist. Work for me, transcend, don't be attached. Do it for the sake of dharma. Try to be satisfied with the self, within the self. Don't try to be externally conditioned. So then, after 6 chapters, Arjuna is like, okay. But okay, I have a question, right? What happens if I fail? Right? Sometimes have you asked that question? What happens if I fail? So many great stalwart devotees of the present times and in the past in other generations in the Bhagavatam, there are a number of them, fail. Called brasta, yoga brasta, yoga. Practice yoga. But what if you become a yoga brasta? No? The yogic process has 10 rules, do's and don'ts, called yama and niyama. You have to be truthful, you have to be compassionate, you have to be clean, you have to be austere, you have to be satisfied, you have to be respectful. 10 things. And if you fail in any of those, you are a yoga brasta. Means your progress is stopped, and the result of your progress doesn't give you what you expected, right? So that's a yoga brasta. So Arjuna asked Krishna, what happens with the yoga brasta? And then Krishna says at the end of chapter 6, there are two options here. And this is the way he says it. Now, if you are wondering what does he exactly mean, okay, that you may have to ask someone else. But this is what Krishna says. If you have practiced for a long time, he doesn't determine what is a long time. But he says, if you have practiced for a long time, then you take birth in a family of transcendentalists. You are born as a son or daughter of devotees. And if you practice for a short term, right? Again, he doesn't explain what is short term. Then you are born in the family of rich merchants, aristocratic people, pious people, religious people. People are good, people that are decent, people that give charity, people that are pious. Suchinam, Shimatam Gehe, Krishna explains. So in this way, birth is very important, because from birth we can, as Krishna explains, almost automatically take to spiritual life. And sometimes you see, I'm sure you have seen, here in the temple itself, you see little boys or girls, right? And they sometimes are very, very devotional. They pay obeisance, and then they offer the flower, and they touch their head, and it's like I have seen kids picking up the mirdanga and start playing like they knew, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure here also, Of course, there is a warning, but we leave the warning till the end. So, birth is very important. And why I'm saying this, because one may say, okay, it's too late. I'm born already here in a degraded family, whatever, and here I am. But in many cases, we're going to take another birth. At least in my case, I know that. So we have to be careful. And therefore, the Bhagavatam gives us these warnings. And Gita also. We have to be careful because we are going there, right? And many times I like to give the example that life is just like an airport. In the airport, you have two sides, not the domestic or international, but what are the two areas of the arrival and departure? People are taking birth and people are dying, are departing, right? Departed soul, right? And where does the departed go? For another arrival. So it's just like that. It's called samsara. That's the airport name. Right? So it's important to know about birth, because we don't know where we come from. But we definitely can do something that determines our next birth. And if we have, and this is the Acharya's explanation, if we have the right consciousness, we will born, what is the prayer of the Vaishnavas? To born where? New York, Sydney. Huh? In the house of devotees. In the house of devotees. So we pray that, we are born. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, even like an insect. Here, here, because it's a farm, you find so many insects, right? Sometimes we have to be careful. Maybe someone prayed hard. Said tikis and, so many insects like that. So birth is very important. Death is very important. These are some of the main concepts explained in Bhagavad Gita. So here, Vidura, of course, has a great lineage, and therefore great things are expected from him, Arjuna, Parikshit, all these great souls, great lineage. He was Jamaraj himself that appeared in the form of Vidura. So in these two cantos, third and fourth canto, we find the instructions of Maitreya. That's a lot of teachings there. And what happens? What happens after Vidura listens to two cantos from Maitreya, more or less? What he does, he says, I need to go and save my brother. And he goes back to Hastinapur to save his brother. So Prabhupada explains that in the same line, after we take this knowledge, accept this process, and take it up somehow, to some extent, we shouldn't only think about our benefit, right? I've been talking about making you self-conscious, where you were in your last birth, where would you be in your next birth? But whatever it is, that's up to Krishna, and of course, to our actions and consciousness. But the best thing that we can do is to try to help others. And Krishna says at the end of the Bhagavad Gita that there is no one more dear to me, and never will be anyone more dear to me than one who presents this to others, preaches this, gives this to others. So much so, right? Bhagavad Gita, 5,000 plus years ago, that Krishna himself, to show that point, he comes as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he comes and preaches that. So there's nothing better than, of course, practicing achar and presenting these to others and sharing that achar, prachar. Whatever you practice, you preach. Give this to others. So therefore, Vidura is here because he wants to listen from Maitreya about Krishna. It's quite incredible, this third canto. It's amazing. Because the third canto, we can see that the Bhagavatam is like expanding. It's like a projector. So if you put a screen close to the projector, there's a size of that projection. But you bring it further, it's bigger, like that, yeah? So in the first canto, it's called, what's called the title of the first canto? Creation. The first canto is called Creation. And the second canto? Cosmic Manifestation. Yeah? And the third canto, Status Quo. So, this is the point. The first thing that we need to understand in order for us to become God realized is that matter comes from spirit. Matter comes from Krishna. Matter comes from God. But God is not matter. Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. So self-realization means we are not the body, yeah? And God realization means that everything comes from Krishna. And that's what it's going to be the curriculum here. And that's why two cantos are dedicated to Maitreya's teachings to Vidura. Because we need to learn this clearly, that if we want to see Krishna everywhere, we need to learn about his creation. That's why the first canto is called Creation. That's why the first chapter of the section where Krishna explains himself in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, it's called Knowledge of the Absolute. And the first thing that he talks in that section is about his energies. So unless we understand, as Sri Shupanitad says, unless we understand the path of knowledge and the path of material creation, we cannot obtain liberation. We cannot go back to Godhead. Why? Because we will be confused. Mujanti Yatsuraya. The first verse of Bhagavatam. People are confused and no one can understand me. If we do not understand these things, that doesn't mean that I understand them. I'm just saying what the Shastra says. We will be confused. Sooner or later, we will be confused. Doesn't matter how high we think we are. Doesn't matter how many things we have done or we think we have done. Everything is done by Krishna. But at some point, we will be confused. And the first instruction of the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna is Dhiras tatra namujati. Don't be confused. Right? And when we are confused, what happens? We lament and we desire. Oh, if I have this, I'll be happy. Oh, I don't have this. Oh, I'm so miserable. So that there goes our life. So what Maitreya is going to tell Vidura is exactly the same thing that Krishna tells Brahma. The Chaturshloki, in 4 verses, the whole 18,000 verses are summarized. Just like Bhagavad Gita also has 4 verses, in chapter 10. So the same thing keeps expanding. In 2 cantos, all this knowledge. And the first thing, and you will get drilled into it, Krishna creates everything. It's amazing. Shanti Prabhu was also explaining about that, the expansions of the Lord. Okay, so we stop here, and we have 1 minute for questions, if there's any. Any questions? That's right. Yeah? Oh, okay. All right. So this is like a prelude just coming, like when a movie is going to come out and there are the billboards and things. So this is what's coming. Maitreya is going to give class for 2 cantos, right? And Vidura is going to listen humbly, submissively. And there is amazing when we read the descriptions, at some point, Maitreya is talking to Krishna. He's talking about Krishna, but he says, and you do like this, and you do like that. Krishna is not there, present, physically, we may say. But because the kata is so powerful, that Krishna is there. So much so that Maitreya talks to Krishna. Yeah? Krishna, you do like this. Krishna, you create like that. Krishna, you manifest like this. So Krishna, please enlighten me. Krishna, please be merciful unto me. Krishna is not there, apparently. So sometimes like that, when we pray, we can think, Krishna, please help me. Krishna apparently is not there, but he's there. Right? When Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad Maharaj, where is your Krishna? He's everywhere. Right? That's what he said. Right? Everywhere? Really? So he's in that pillar. Right? He's in that door frame. Prahlad Maharaj said, yeah. Okay, let's see that. And then he grabbed his sword and then Nrsimha comes. Krishna is everywhere. So let's be careful and conscious. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai.